Good afternoon and welcome to TalkSports. It is our weekend edition, which is our Saturday sports special. Well, I should say welcome back again from New York, Brooklyn, New York to be exact, after 5 long months away from Brooklyn, New York. Well, it's always nice to be home and nice to, return in New York with the program, even though we had the program over the past few months, in Charlotte, North Carolina. But, to be speaking to what I would call another distinguished son of the soil from Grenada, as indicated in our introduction, in our promo rather, that Dr. Sean Lambert will be our special guest this weekend, and we'll have a very, casual discussion. I always like to say discussion rather than an interview with Dr. Lambert, who, as you know, represented Grenada. I will say represented Grenada distinguishedly, and he still holds the national men's 100 meters record, something we'll talk to him about, because I know many over the past 2 decades have tried but failed, and certainly it's always a pleasure to have someone as Dr. Lambert, and we'll understand why he is Dr. Lambert and not a professional athlete. A lot of things we'll get to know. And somewhere along, our good friend from Toronto, Rudian Silvan, certainly will join us to chat as well. Certainly he probably will want to know a thing or two from Dr. Lambert, probably to pass on to his athletes, But let me welcome to our program, and for the very first time, Dr. Sean Lambert. It's evening in your neck of the woods, but good day to you, Sean.
Hey, Malcolm, thanks. Good evening to you. Hello, everyone. And thank you for having me on today. It's an honor. I haven't done a sports interview for well over 2 decades now. So pardon me if I'm a bit rusty, but I will do my best to answer as many questions as I can and to offer whatever input I can to the questions. And I'm glad we can have this formal discussion. And you and I have known each other for several years now. But it's nice to see you again, and it's nice to be in a forum and a setting like this again. So thanks for having me on.
Well, certainly, and I like to thank you, first of all, for accepting the invitation and, being available to chat. Since I put up the promo about Dr. Lambert will be joining us, I was, gauging some of the comments, and I know it was a good choice because there were folks who were saying, it's something I don't want to miss. It's something I've looked forward to in a long time, and I'm certain they will want to hear from you. And finally, don't be surprised if we go over by a few minutes, because sometimes when the questions are coming in, we have to.
No problem. I've started this time for you. Don't worry.
Right. That's fine. But let's start off, Sean. Tell us, what it has been like, because I know we want to talk a lot about sports, but for you, it has been more professional life as a doctor now in the medical field, and as a family, as a family man, a husband and a family man. So how it has been for you, and as I always ask, especially when someone is joining the program for the first time, especially in the post-pandemic period, how it has been for you, the challenges, all these sort of things.
Well, it's a good question. I think, obviously during the pandemic, it was a very different time for everybody. We all went through changes. We all seen, changes with human interaction, which has been very different in a way that, we haven't seen before. So we had to adjust to it. We adjust to it in a new way. So the post-pandemic era, work schedules have changed, work patterns have changed, people's behaviors have changed. Certainly in the field of medicine, there's been a huge backlog and demand of patients, and seeing more patients, having the expectations and the standards of care have changed. So it has been very busy. I literally am busy every day of the week. In terms of family gets slotted in my time. Is perhaps the most important aspect of my life at this point. I've been, being married. My wife is also fairly busy in her job. So all in all, I stayed pretty active. I stayed doing things, and and trying to keep in touch with everything as well.
Well, it's really nice to hear that, and certainly we wish you all the best, because I know how tough it could be for you and family, especially in the sort of professional landscape that we're living in today. But Sean, let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Sean Lambert, as the person we knew from the athlete, a former athlete, I should say, but since from the private primary school, I believe, right? The private primary school days. And, that was the beginning. And there were early signs that Sean Lambert will be the athlete he turned out to be at the time. Very, very early sign. Let's talk about those early days, Sean.
Yeah, so very early on, I think most of my development started in St. Mary's Junior School, to be precise. And it was basically just running around in the playground at the time. And then somewhere, I think, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, but somewhere at about 6 or 7, I think I went to the CSE age group games in St. Vincent. At the time, I think I was there with Miss Chase. I don't think she used to teach in convent. I don't think she's there again. And a few other athletes. Myself, David Richards was there. We went to St. Vincent. That was the first time I actually represented the Grenada. So I must have been about 7 or 8 at the time. And it was a very exciting time. It was a regional meet, and I did very well there. Later I returned, and then they set up. At the time, there wasn't any private school games, so the public schools had I forgot what it was called, but they had a games a sort of an intercall between them. But we didn't have that in primary schools. It was essentially your school sports, and that was it. And they set up the proprietary games, and I must have been about 9 a.m. when that happened. So I did that for 3 years at St. Mary's. Again, it was a very exciting time. I was outstanding in the divisions. I was in for 2 years, 9 to 10, and then 11. And then after that, I sat common entrance and went to Grenada Boys Secondary School. So those were my very early formative years, full of fun and excitement in track and field. And then I moved to Grenada Boys Secondary School,
where we will say it all began again. Yeah. A very and even before we go into the actual your time at the GBSS, which I know you'll fondly remember some of the guys who you competed with at a games, even in the house, the various. By the way, which house you were in again? You were in
Hughes.
Right, you were in Hughes. Right, the greenhouse. And certainly some of your good friends may have been from Archer or Batiste or even Maguire. But before you went into the GBSS, actually went into track and field, basically track. Were there any other sport you had in mind, or you wanted to compete, or you were competing in?
I think as a Caribbean boy growing up, is at the time West Indies cricket was doing very well. So you always fantasize about doing cricket. At the time as well, the Chicago Bulls were a big thing. Michael Jordan was. We're talking about the very early 90s. So you kind of played around with these sports, but I knew it wasn't something I would do. I wanted to do my passion very, very early on. From the time I accompanied my father to the national championships, as he was an official, and I just went just to watch. I knew from that point on, very young, I knew, before 10, this is what I was going to do, and I wanted to go to GBSS. Running was where it's at for me. So I saw the sports, I played all the sports for fun and interest, but I knew long term I didn't have any passion. My first love was breathing that air in Queen's Park, when there was a Queen's Park, for those of you who might remember the nice big green pasture we used to have there. of all the sporting events before we had a stadium and before we used canteen. It was always track and field, but I did a little bit of dithering in things like cricket and things like basketball. I never tried football. I think I always had two left feet, so that was really not my forte.
Uh,
Um, yeah, but go ahead.
yeah, but and you know, this is something I like about the audience. You know, I asked you the question, and before you could have answered, somebody just say Hughes. You know, and, and then there was also the Tanting Bullets as well. But
Yes.
yeah, thank you, Sam, for that. You know, that was the Anglican High School GBSS combination. But you mentioned your dad, but you came from a family as well, Sean, that
Yes.
deep in sports, because not just your father, but your mom was also assisted somewhere or the other in track and field, officiating at times. She used to be on the
Yeah.
sidelines. I remember your mom, and then your uncle. You know,
Yeah.
the late Dr. Lambert, David Lambert. He also was an official. So
Yeah.
the family itself, you know, the Lambert family, was deeply involved in sports.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's embedded in, I think, my family's DNA. I mean, it goes even further back. I think I was told about my uncle, the mule, who, because my father's family, we're essentially from the heart of town, what they call Four Roads, right? That's where my grandfather grew up. Well, he grew up in Woburn, but he went there later on because that's where his mother is from. And there was the mule, and there's my late uncle, as you knew, who had a PBC record. Because most of my family are actually PBC boys. I was one of the few to break the mold. My brothers, all my cousins, all my uncles went to PBC, but I knew from the start I wasn't a PBC boy. Um, so they all ran, but my uncle Russell, he was the big gun. He was the one who was well known, sort of nationally. I think he did Carifta. He represented PBC, and my dad did some things like long jump and so. But my family has always been generationally involved in speed. We have a need for speed in our family.
Mhm. Well, yeah, it manifested itself when Sean got into the GBSS, and then let's talk a bit about entering the GBSS and your
Yeah.
early days at the GBSS, probably as a prep sub junior, and you know, competing. What it was like, Sean.
So early on, and for me, as I said, when I started going to my company, my dad, to the officiating in sports nationally, there were lots of athletes from GBSS that I admired. I mean, PBC had some very good athletes as well. Like guys like Kwesi Woodruff was very good, but GBSS always had, it was always loaded. There were guys like Stacey Beggs, Robert Celestine. These guys were, there was a lot of unity, and there was always excitement on the GBSS stand. So I immediately gravitated towards a team like that. So I knew when I sat common entrance, we had to put your choices then. I don't know if it's still like that. It was clear for me. The only reason, and it's perhaps not the best reason to choose a school, but that's the reason I essentially chose GBSS. It was because I wanted to run. So I eventually got into GBSS, and it was everything I thought it would be. When we were there for my 5 years being there, when I entered in '94, I was in Hugh's house, and during that time made lots of important relationships, some bonds of friends I have today. We have still horse people like Dwayne Griffith, Mark Pitt, Deron Ross, all of us still very good friends. Guys I remember who are a lot older than me, I always looked up to them. People like Jason Rush. Lots of good people, lots of very good friendships I made over the years. Fabian Blake, a lot of them are older, moved on with families and so on. But it's always been a very good time because GBSS has always had a good bond. When you go to GBSS for 5 years, the fraternity and the brotherhood you make and the bonds you make during that time, it's unbreakable. And even though sometimes you have differences, but that bond and that history, you can't really break it. So it was a fantastic time during those years, and it was a significant part of my life and always will be.
Right, yeah, certainly. And you call the names of the guys who you would have well competed against in terms of inter-house, you
Yeah,
know, and competed with in terms of intercall, etc. But there's certainly some rivalries you may have come across over the
yeah,
years. At intercall in particular, I mentioned the Presentation Brothers College, St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School,
Yeah.
SAS as well. Even I think MacDonald College, Happy Hill Secondary School, just to name a few of those schools, that you. Let's talk a bit about those rivalries. I mean, it's a while now, Sean, but I'm
Yeah.
certain,
Listen,
that you could,
of course,
recollect
of
and stuff.
course. And listen, so my first set of rivalries began right in GBSS, right? So even from the prep days, I remember when I first went in doing Griffith, he actually came from Heinze, St. George's Anglican Primary School. And there was a big contention between the two of us and, who would emerge as the best sprinter to come in from Form 1. And luckily I won that one. And then, guys like Mark Pear, who was in Maguire House, but Mark was a very big, strong, solid guy. But he was very fast as well. But even at the end of our sports, we came together because we were part of the intercall team, and we went through that for 5 years together. But also guys who were very good, Melvin Toussaint from McDonald College, and that was a rivalry throughout my years. I mean, because even my first year at intercall, he won the 200. And he actually beat me in the 100 and the 200. So I got a spanking on my first year of intercall. I had a baptism of fire, and I had to learn from that. Other guys who were very good during my time, it was, you had Chase Celestine, who was from SAS. You had Ken Isaac Edwards. You had David Richards from St. Mark's, and David Richards and I actually ran at CACH group games when we were 7, and that rivalry began even as far back as then. In Happy Hill, you had Still, Nicholas. So you had a lot of very, very fast guys, and we remained in that time. You had Leslie from Boca. So you had very good guys during that time, and there was a lot of rivalry between us, particularly because we wanted to win, they wanted to win. But it was very good times, as I said, and a lot of us have remained friends throughout the years.
Yeah, well, that certainly would have been those wonder years of intercall, of track, like track and field, but particularly the sprinting. And
Yeah,
certain folks look forward to the 100s, the 200s, and
yeah,
then also they look forward to the relays as well, Sean,
yes,
because in those days it was all about a collective, a team effort for the various schools.
absolutely.
So despite the rivalry, when it comes to the inter-house championships, when it comes to intercall, you guys move as one, as they will say. You move
Yeah,
as one. Yeah.
absolutely. And I mean, and as I said, and this was something that was almost passed on and transcended, through time. Because when you looked at guys who were, I remember when I was a sub junior looking on at the guys who were in the senior relay, because the senior relay was always a highlight most times of intercall. And you had guys like Tyrone, Fabian Blake, you had Randy Williams, you had Jason Rush, you had all these guys, and they were winning because GBSS, we used to stamp our name on the 4x1, particularly all of the 4x1s at every level, sub junior, junior, senior. But the senior was always the one that you could never lose because it was always a thing to win. And it kind of every single year, I don't think we ever lost relays during my time when I was there at any level. And the guys that I grew up with and the guys that I ran for years with, there was always, the familiar names was Deron, it was Dwayne, it was Mark, there were a few other guys that came in and out, but those were the constants in my time there. And it was very, very good. And, the rivalry was there, but the camaraderie that we built over those years was just phenomenal. And the atmosphere in Intercall when I was, when at Queen's Park at the time, it it was eclectic is the best way to describe it. You had on one side of the stand you had SAS, and on the other side you had GBSS, and then you had all the other
All the other
small schools
schools.
kind of meshed in between them.
Right.
And between the melodies, between the chants that you could have, the air itself was always very tense, man. It was you bring back a lot of memories to me,
Yeah.
Pascal.
Well, yeah,
It
because
was very good.
and I like how you said, because someone told me about this, the GBSS on one, SAS on the other, all the others between, and depend on who is winning, they gravitate
Yeah,
towards, they gravitate towards the GBSS or to
yeah,
SAS, and
yeah,
yeah, it was. I don't think we have that sort of rivalry
yeah,
as it is now, and I think a lot has changed over the years, but
Yeah.
it's something that folks really enjoyed. And as you can see, sitting down and recollecting on those things, I just wish we had the audio visuals, the visuals to really
Yeah.
show what it was like then for those who didn't really experience it, to really experience that sort of rivalry back then, you know.
Yeah, I mean, remember Intercall at that time, I don't know if it still is. Intercall was the biggest local sporting event you could have. I mean, this
Mhm.
is what every Grenadian boy dreamt of at the time, irrespective of what sport you played. Intercall time, and that was a highlight. I mean, in your secondary school life, you going through in the second term, that is what is the hallmark of the second term. It's intercall, and as a nation, because remember, before leading up to intercall, every school used to have its sports, right? So you have GBSS, you have PBCI, and everybody gauging their times, and they're seeing who's where and who clocked the fastest time, and then who goes on the news at 7 o'clock, and by 7:20, you see. So everybody was kind of measuring their points, who could win there. SAS used to own the field, we used to own the track.
Yeah.
It was always a few little events that would have made a difference. And that was basically from January all the way towards Easter. And the country used to be so unanimously geared towards sports at that time,
Yeah.
adults as well as school children, that it was just the best place to be at the time. It was just the best thing to do.
Yeah, I think the trash talking started way back, as we say, and
Yeah,
and you're correct to the point that we didn't have any professional athletes during that period in particular. So
yeah,
Intercall was the biggest and the
yeah,
best.
yeah,
And not even, the Premier League football and these things could have clashed with
yeah,
Intercall. So everyone looked forward to Intercall. Everyone had their heroes. Everyone
yeah,
had their stars. Um,
precisely.
you look for on the TV when you see particular faces, that's my star, and
Yeah,
things like
yeah,
that. So certainly it had its period. Um, we will try to go a little away from Intercall, and then we'll come back again
sure.
and talk. By the way, my good friend Rudian is joining us from Toronto. Let me say good. Well, yes, it should be afternoon in Toronto. Rudian,
Yes,
good
it is.
afternoon to you.
Hey, afternoon, Mike. How you doing?
Fine.
Salam, but it's good to see you. How you doing,
Nice
doctor?
to meet you. All right, I'm
You
fine, thank you.
you you bring back a memory because I remember I was in Intercall watching Melvin beat you. I uh, I actually did because and that's my cousin, so we all went to
Okay.
Magdalene College.
Yeah, 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 I
So
know that.
yeah, so I remember that you actually bring that memory back, but that was the
Yeah.
fun days. And like you put it in so much words, it's not the same
Okay.
today. Sports
Yeah.
is not the same.
Well, yeah,
It's
well,
not the same.
Sean hasn't really
Yeah,
experienced,
it's not the same.
so he's
Yeah,
really gauging. But while
yeah.
you're on that, let me just get some comments. Sounds like my son's story, and I guess many other athletes, they aspire to attend the GBSS. Sean, that was when you were talking about when you left private primary school and moving
Yeah.
to secondary school, how the decision to attend the GBSS. Kellen and Twine said there was a year when the great Negus Swan overtook Sean Moore in an epic 4x1 relay and won. I remember there was Sean Moore, but I hope he's not
Yeah.
referring to Sean Lambert this time because we had a couple Sean at the GBSS,
It was Sean Moore. I was
Yeah, I
the
remember.
I was the third leg runner on that relay team.
Yeah, I remember Sean Moore as
Yeah,
well. And then
because me and niggas, yeah,
Negus, yeah. And Negus is related to Bruce
Bruce,
Bruce Swan,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
he says, I really enjoyed the rivalry between SAS and GBSS. That was when Intercall was interesting. And
Cool.
Roger Duncan said, the school fans and those bleachers shouting, go, Sean, go. Absolutely amazing. Then there was the winner's special walk. Sean knows. Yeah, Sean, you know about that. So lots of memories, no doubt. And I'm certain, Sean, when you come around those guys, when you meet those guys, whatever. By the way, Sean is in London, England, so it's not so often he will get to meet most of his friends who are
Yeah.
basically in probably the United States or in Grenada. So
Yeah.
when he travels, then he gets. I'm certain, Sean, that there are times you all sit around and chat the old talk and recollect those times.
Of course, I mean, those times will be until you're old and gray. You know, I mean, track has always been my first love, and it will always be that. Nothing will change. I mean, when you meet your old classmates and even your rivalries. I mean, when I was home recently, I was when I say recently, about a year and a half ago, I drove up to say I was driving up to Sates, and I saw Melvin sat at the side of the road, and we spoke for a little while. If I see Bruce, we'll sit there and we'll reminisce for a bit. Even in London, I met Ken David. I don't know if you remember him. He was from Carriacou.
Carriacou, yeah.
Yeah, so I saw him in Carnival not too long ago. We would talk about the fun times. I mean, we had a very good time, and and I don't think anything could take that away from us. And even though at the time we were competing, there was no friendship when we were competing, but when it was said and done, I think everybody recognized the fact that we were there for a good time. And we enjoyed it. We represented our schools, where some of us went on to represent our countries, and it was just a time when you can't take that away from us. So we will always reflect on that, and it's always great to see all of these boys, particularly my GBSS boys.
So not too long after Sean, after school and things like that, so you went up to the United States, University of Tennessee,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
And there for folks, for those of you who don't know, Sean was among the trio of sprinters from Tennessee that included Leonard Scott and Justin Gatlin. Yeah. And always used to be, a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 3, whatever, and let's talk a bit about sprinting at Tennessee with the likes of Gatlin and Scott and others, NCAA Division I during those years, Sean.
So before we even got to Tennessee, I remember I did one day in New York at South Shore, and
South Shore. That's primary. Really, that's the public school, right?
Yeah, that was so I did that in PSAL for 1 year. Again, I made very good friends there. And then I was recruited by UCLA. Then I had Tennessee, Indiana, Florida. I had a few schools after they saw me, and because I competed nationally, won a few things. And so I had a pretty good CV for scholarship offers, and I got one. And there I met Justin Gatlin, and we came in as what we call at the time freshmen. And he came from Florida. He was always a phenomenal athlete as well. He is actually recruited as a hurdler turned sprinter. I was recruited purely as a sprinter. And Tennessee at the time I think they're still in the Southeastern Conference. And they were not that good as school, but they were okay. And then I think by the end of our freshman year, we pretty much won just about everything there was to win. We won the Southeastern Conference championships. We had set the national. We ran the fastest times nationally. We went on. We won the national, the NCAA's Division I. We won things at Penn relays. I set the national record then. So it was a grand old time again. So it just continued to make a lot of sense, and I continued to enjoy track and field a lot at Tennessee, and I was studying there at the time. But it was also very good.
In fact, it was on the the 31st of May 2001 NCAA championships when you ran 10-1-7, and that in 2001. Now we in, that's what 21 years later, and it still stands. I mean, folks came very close to it. In particular, Nazio John would have come very close to it, albeit it was even wind assisted as well, But are you amazed, Sean, that even after 2 decades, 10-1-7 still standing, and no one seems to be, well, apart from what I just said regarding Nazio, no one seems to be very close to that time?
As a senior record, I think, because it is, as a junior record, I think it's still pretty fast as a junior record. As a senior record, I think I've been following Nazio John, and even prior to this last World Junior Championships, I was rooting for him, and I thought, because he had a very good performance, he ended up in the finals, not the last World Junior Championships, but the one before that. And, I was, convinced about a few things he could have done different. As I watched his races several times, and I think there were a few things I thought he was going to work on in preparation for this one, but I don't know what happened, and it didn't seem as if he had a chance to work on it. But am I surprised? As a junior, yes. I think the junior time is fast. I mean, when I set that time, it was the third fastest time in the world that year. So it was as a junior. So it is a very fast time as a junior. But the juniors now are running ridiculously fast times. I mean, if you look at the guy from Botswana, Let's Chibogo, they're running 9 seconds in the 100. So, and then even, running 19 seconds in the 200, there's the young guy from Florida who broke Usain Bolt's record. So these young boys are running much, much faster than we did when I was there. But as a national record, I think it will fall. The senior record will fall. I suspect it will fall at some time within the next 5 or so years. Because I think the training is a lot better, the awareness is a lot better, the funding is a lot better for track and field than it was when I was there, and so there's ample opportunity for it to fall. But as a junior record, I still think it's a pretty competitive junior record. But if we can get anybody to come in and do that, then I'm all for that.
Mm-hmm. Rudian, while we're on that, which involves a little technical, any question to Dr. Lambert?
Yeah, no, definitely. Sean, I went to University of Memphis. We never competed. It was in the same timeline, but I was in Conference USA, you was in the SEC, so we never clash. We never clash. Yeah. But I have heard and I've seen your races, because they talk about a young man from Grenada. So you're curious, concerning that. But I mean, I'm looking at the times today that you ran, and look at what the times that those young boys are running today. It's really a handful of those guys running that fast. Yeah. And it's only a handful of guys running the 10, 2 and under, right? So it's not like a whole lot of these guys in them out there that's running that fast. So what you have achieved, that is just really amazing compared to today. But we expect that in time we should have seen a progression and the scale should be going up. But it seems like the scale is going downward instead of going up. And in certain events, I mean, not the 400, of course, and but it is time for us to do that. Like I said, the funding is there, hoping is better organization in a sense compared to when we was back home. But is the opportunity there? The question is the opportunity there? Is the opportunity there for the young ones to go there and do what they want to do? Go there and perform, go there and do what they have to do. Yeah, everything else is there, but is the opportunity there for them? So I think that's what's really lacking the most, the opportunity, and they gotta want it. They gotta hungry like when we are running. We hungry. We just doing it and we just having a good time. Yeah. And I think is it the same today? The generation is not like us. No. We are a different breed. Completely. I don't know about today. Yeah. So.
Rudy, I mean, you speak a book, is when we were competing, as I said, my aspiration and the highlight of my life was entering and running for GBSS. That's as far as it kind of went very early on because it was fun. I think now globally we can see, a young boy from Grenada now could put on the TV and see just about anything. I mean, you can have YouTube, you have access to so much information, you have access to so much opportunity. When I was there, I was one of the first ones to be entering into a D1 school. Everyone else kind of channeled off into what we call a junior second.
Yeah, JUCO,
and then matriculated into a Division 1 school. So, but no, the times have changed, and I think a lot of Grenadians, they're having the opportunity. And they should grasp that opportunity by, and just like, as you said, grab the bull by the horns and just kind of run with it. And I'm hoping more people can see that. Because to me, at the end of the day, sport is an opportunity for you to develop holistically as an individual, right? It is to have fun, it's to make friends, but it's to develop yourself to be a well-adjusted human being, to use as much potential and talent that God has given you to become a better person. And that's the biggest prize that you will get from sport. Right? Is how you will be and what you will do and what you will adjust to with your life afterwards. Now, I think Grenada has always been kind of known to be a field throwing country. Even from my days of Carifta, javelin was the thing. Yes. Javelin, discus. That's always kind of where we had. And then Aline came on with when he won the 400 meter indoors first, and then he went on to do it outdoors, and he did phenomenal by placing fourth. And then Kirani took that baton, and we know he's now the best 400 meter athlete ever. And that's my opinion, but I think he's got a lot to back that up with. But in terms of the 100 now is always the most competitive event in track and field. It is the blue ribbon event not just in track and field, but in the Olympics. We're talking about, globally, we're talking about billions of people gluing in to watch that race when it is being run. So it is fiercely competitive. Do we have the talent in Grenada to achieve the times that I did? Absolutely. I have no doubt about it. Do we have the training regimes and the support in place to do it? I don't know. I can't answer that question because I'm not involved in that side of it. And I'm, but it would be good to see what can happen in the next couple of years. Sport has probably taken a bit globally in the last 2 years, primarily because of the pandemic. But it would be good to see if there is any sort of emerging talents coming out. I'm more than happy to see, work with, talk with, tutor, but I would love to see it happen. But as to why it hasn't happened, it's not because of a lack of talent, that's for sure. It's probably because of a lack of support, is what I think is more of the reason.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. But and also even with us too, even as the athletes in Grenada, for what we have seen, what we have heard, it falls on the management problem. Yeah. Those in charge, and it's sometimes we come on these programs and we say it over and over and over, hoping that those can hear what we are saying, because we are hearing for those athletes.
Yeah.
If we focus on all those athletes who have really made it already, then we just forgotten the rest, and they don't get that opportunity. So I think it's the managing problem. The athletes is ready and willing.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot, but we have one facility, but we have places. Many of the world athletes train on grass and become the greatest in the world, and we have that. Some of them run in hills, and we have that. My athlete is in University of Georgia right now, and she's telling me that it is painful. She called me last night and she's crying, telling me how hard it is. So I said, for you to get better, you have to do what? Do the work. So and it's hill, and she's running hills. We have hills. But is the management giving the athletes the opportunity to get it done? Because like I said, we have it there. We have the athletes. We're willing. Our biggest event that we should ever go into with a full team, it should be Carifta Games. Because there's not really a standard for Carifta Games, but we should give the athletes those opportunity to go out there and see what it is, and they'll be hungry for it. They'll be hungry for it, and they're going to want to do it over and over and over.
100%.
But is it there for them?
Rudian, there was a question here for Sean regarding, I would like to know, in Sean's opinion, what could Nazio work on in terms of his preparation for World Games? And as one who has carried the baton in terms of a sprinter before, and I don't know if you would have seen Nazio competing, well, videos basically of him competing. In your opinion, what you think he needs to do as a sprinter?
So I've watched a few of his videos, and I've watched the ones earlier on more so than the most recent ones, because I didn't have that many clips of him. But I'm not exactly sure. Of course, if barring injury, assuming everything has been working fine with him, I definitely think the early part of his race, he needs to spend a little bit more time driving. And then when he gets to after he completes his transition, I think he looks a bit like he comes back on everyone. It's perhaps because they're probably decelerating a lot quicker than him. But I think he's either going a lot faster. But I think if he works on the first part of his race to get a lot more control of the race very early on, he'll do a lot. He'll run much faster. But I think how to get to that first part of the race done properly is by you need to have a very, very explosive start. And you need to work on having a lot of explosive speed, and that comes from doing a lot of work in the weight room, and that comes with off-season work, and then a lot of running after that. That's what I think he would need to work on fairly early on in this race to improve. Because I think his times this year his best times were actually at the World Championships, the World Junior Championships. Early on, he wasn't doing that great, but I think he did better as the event progressed, and that's a good thing. That's a very good thing for him, because at the end of the day, in sport, what you want to do is not let your training go to waste, right? In any sport you do, because you would see there's so much you can do in training, but after that, it comes down to what you do with your head. When you go on the line to compete, particularly in big races, you need to let your training count. And how do you let your training count? Now, some people can do it very good naturally. Some people have to learn to do it properly. But when it comes to race day, you need to be able to put all that you've learned together and execute. Else, it makes no difference how hard you train.
And if I can add on that, he remind me of that watching Donovan Bailey.
Yeah.
The first part, the first 60 meters of Donovan Bailey that's where he really needed to work on, which is the last 40 meters for Nazio is great, but that first 60 meters, that first 60 meters is what you really need to work on, and that with the explosive coming in and then drive. And once you work on that with the strength, short 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. If you do that, bam, 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 I think he'll drive. But we're not the coach, so
no, exactly. I'm not the coach. But I'm just by watching the videos and remembering how things work. I just said, his second half I think is pretty good. I think if he gets the first half done properly, and perhaps probably doing a little bit more indoors with 60s would help. But again, I'm not a coach, so I don't.
Well, I'm certain that his coach, who is his dad, is working on, so he will consider some of the comments. Talking about comments, let me get some of the comments in here. If only the modern opportunities that exist now was available 20 to 30 years ago, the sport nutrition, the modern gyms, professional coaches, and the synthetic tracks, people like Sean Lambert, Robbie, Stacey Beggs, plus the greats from SAS, McDonald College, St. John's Christian Secondary School, and others, I'm sure we would have had more than 10 Olympic medals at present. Then Kellon continues, Intercall nowadays is very personal. It's all about winning at all cost. We have seen coaches openly criticizing officials on social media. Oh, how I wish that the love, camaraderie, and friendly rivalry can return. Winning is great, but love and appreciation is greater than winning in sports. And Roger Duncan said, here is a 4-step procedure to regain athletic competitiveness and better times. 1, place back the PE teachers in primary schools. 2, develop and support club structures and programs. 3, spread athletic competitions year-round. 4, government to provide corporate tax incentives to private sector to invest into sports. And he also added, and for another, government should invest into a sports lab. So these are some of the comments coming in. There are more, but we'll continue with them in a while. Now, Sean, indication why, and the question, and I know I put it there. If you can tell us why Sean decided to go into the medical field, rather than stay as a well, when I say stay after college, go into professional athletics. The Justin Gatlin, for example, went in as a professional athlete. There were others, but you made that decision to go into the medical field, or to move away. Let's say, first of all, to move away from professional track.
So why? I think, it's probably the most common question I get, and I don't have all the time. I have probably inconsistent answers with it, because sometimes I don't even know why myself. But the reality is, when I completed my time at university, I had my degree, and I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do towards the end. So it was either going to med school or staying on track, as you know, Bascom. Now, what happened is that at the time there wasn't much. I didn't have a professional offer. I had agents come up to me, but there wasn't anything. I would have to basically support myself for the first year of pursuing track and field, right? So my university scholarship was going to support me for a further 6 months. I had a job, so I was working a job, and I would essentially have to do. It essentially came to a funding issue. So there was contact made between myself and the authorities at home. There wasn't any response from the authorities. And I think over time, I felt a bit disincentivized myself to continue, because I kind of wanted to move on with my life. And I didn't want to feel that I was going to invest in something which wasn't giving me as much return as I was hoping to get. It's probably the best way I could put it. And I think at some point, I felt as if I lost a bit of confidence in myself, because I wanted to do more, I wanted to do better, and I didn't see a way to do it, and I didn't feel like I had the support. So I did what I did what I knew how to do best, and there was an opportunity for me to enter into med school and study medicine. I said, fine. Some people work their entire lives into trying to become a doctor. I didn't really spend that much time and effort into it, and it came, and then I said, I might as well do it. So it was something I do reflect on regularly, but it's not something I dwell on, and it's not something I have any kind of whole feelings towards. But it is a thing that I think about, because I did that. I made that decision at 22, and I thought at the time I was old. I kind of felt like I was old and time was going and I wasn't doing anything with my life. When I realized some people only started running at 22. If you look at guys like Asafa Powell, they only started picking up their spikes later on in life. So I think that's essentially what happened in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it, but I don't really want to go into the intricacies and the details of what happened there. But in a nutshell, to summarize everything, I think that's what it was.
Well, like a professional, you give a professional response. Some people will say that Sean gave a professional response to that question. You said you don't want to go into the intricacies, but and certainly you will say, even after reflecting, there are not much regrets on the decision you made, right? Yeah, not much. You say not much regrets on such a decision, but certainly, there are those who will probably add other things to that. Let me see. Kellen says, question to Sean and Rudian: do you think it's lack of focus or the presence of other sporting disciplines or lack of incentives that mainly responsible for the lack of many athletes performing at such high standards? What do you think could be done now to create a sudden change in the minds of local athletes? Let's see if we can get this one answered, and then we'll go on to some more questions. What do you think is the reason why we are getting this sort of lack of, to summarize what he's saying, probably focus on the presence of other sporting disciplines. He's debating what could be causing this sudden change in the minds of local athletes, or what could be done to create.
I actually thought, I'm not home, but I actually thought it was doing better, because I'm looking at what people like Naka are doing in basketball. I'm looking at what people like Lester Smith are doing with football. I've just looked at what the CC Can, the swimmers, are doing in Grenada right now. I think that they've been doing a good job. So but he is right. I haven't been hearing much about track and field. So in terms of what could be done, I think what needs to be done more is having little workshops within schools that tells students about the benefits and the opportunities there are within sport, particularly track and field. I mean, you have a phenomenal chance to make a huge difference in your life, to go out there and to do better for yourself. You have a chance to earn a degree. You have a chance to do better for your family, to develop yourself, develop your mind. And I think for me, what's the most important thing at this point is passing that experience on to other people. Not just having it there and keeping it to yourself and taking it with you to the grave, but sharing that experience, sharing what it was like, and using that as a platform to build and to do better in the future. But I think that's the most important thing with sport. So I think perhaps maybe a relationship with the schools and the IOC or the GAAA would be good enough to incentivize athletes or student athletes to do better, or for schools to have a good approach towards sports, or to see sport better. Because when I was there, in some ways, sport wasn't seen as a thing for intelligent students or students who did very well. It was seen as a thing where if you weren't doing so well in school, you kind of go and you do that. But I think that mindset needs to change. I think we need to see, and if we look at there's a young Jamaican chap, an 800-meter runner, who's done phenomenal at the 800, and he's now got a scholarship to, I think, Dartmouth, which is an Ivy League school in the United States. So I think the things have changed, times have changed. We need, perhaps break away from that mentality that if you're good in sports, then you're not really doing good in your academics. I think we need to see sports as a big avenue towards developing athletes, not just to do good at sports, but to do better as human beings.
Mm-hmm. Well said on that point there. So let me get some more comments that came in while you were speaking. Well, Thanks for the advice, Sean. I will certainly work on what you suggested. You were on point, and that will be the coach and dad of Nazio. Okay.
You're welcome.
Sam is saying, Dr. Lambert, your response is very candid and honest. It is sad because we are all sitting here wondering, what if you had the support? What if you had the support?
You know, I don't think of it like that, you know, Bascom, because I did have some support. I'd be very honest with you. I'm not someone who would sit there wondering. Like I said, right now, my goal is really to do better for everybody. You know, we can, if we wanted to look back, we can say what if everybody had the support. The reality is, what's done is done. What we can do is that we have a good young person by the name of Nazio John. We could put that time, that energy, that experience into molding this young man into doing better for the country, right? So I think I appreciate the support, and I appreciate all that. But don't worry, I'm all right. I think at the end of the day, I think I've had a lot of support. I've had a lot of friends. I've had a lot of people who wished me well over the years. So I'm not lacking in those areas. And to me, that is worth everything. You know, that's worth more than I could ever repay the Grenadian public for what they've done for me for over the years. You know, even when I go home now, I'll give you a story, Bascom. I go home now, and I remember the last time I was filling up some petrol at the station, and I was getting a bit irate because the person was taking so long to do what they were doing. You know, typical Grenadian taking their time, and then when she came to the car, she filled up the petrol, and she was coming to, she was coming to be paid for it. She said, "Hey, Sean, you long I ain't see you." And I remember when you used to run into call, and whatever frustration and anger you felt at that time has to be dissipated, because you realize that people have a deep sense of appreciation for that time, that 5 years that I gave them in Intercall. The public still remembers that. They still appreciate that. And to me, that is all the support and appreciation that I could ever ask for in life, because you can't, there's no price attached to that. And all I could do from here on out, I mean, I'm so happy to see what Kirani has done. And I'm hoping that we can have several more people to come up, and we could share that experience, and we could share that happiness, and we could just continue building.
Sean, you're very, I would say, modest. You're very honest, but there are people who are upset. They are irate. They are frustrated because they have basically experienced, they have seen, what has happened to so many folks. So you may have to, bear with them on that, because the frustration reached a point where, hey, yes, that is probably 20 plus years ago. But even then, 20 plus years after, there are folks who are still having these sort of problems, So that is, in that context, that's why some of them are saying that, what if you had the support then?
Yeah.
But there are still those who are, they still don't have the support at 20 plus years, after.
And I get that, because I saw one of your interviews I think you did with Rondell, and I get a lot of the frustrations, but I don't want to I don't want to go into that Pandora box, because I think that's a time and a place for that. I get it, and I'm more than happy to address it right at any time, because I have lots of ideas on how things can change and how we could do better. But I will be guided by what the public want and what the people want.
All right. So let's get in some more comments. For the very same reason why you didn't go pro, it is why the initiative was brought forward for the government to invest into our athletes. Like you, most athletes may not receive an offer right after school, so it's imperative we have a program in place to support these athletes. That's from Ali McIntyre. Mike Batiste is saying, sad we lost Sean's talent so early. Grenada got a new athlete running 45.18 in the 400 meters this year, and the authorities are giving him the runaround. I hope we don't lose him too.
I hope so.
So that is in that context, some of them are expressing that. I still can't over the pain that Sean Lambert and some of the other GBSS athletes caused my sass in some of the intercall games over the years. Long live the rivalry. And Sam say, agreed and understood. Your experience has purpose in impacting the present and future generations. Lincoln Tour Deputy said, big up yourself, Dr. Lambert. You contributed and brought joy as an athlete, and you're contributing and bringing even more joy to many more thousands of people as a medical doctor. Grenada and GBSS are proud of you. You only were in the wrong GBSS house. I expect that to come at some point in time. I apologize for asking you about that house earlier.
No, that's all right, man. I like that, man. Don't worry about that, man.
Yeah, I know. And there's another one. Nice to see Sean Lambert become a doctor. Yeah. A perfect example for all to follow, making great choices in addition to being an athlete. Life after sports, so many other athletes have become frustrated and fell by the wayside after they got an international sports scholarship. Hope they can use Sean's as an example. And I Kellon made that point there, Sean, and I think earlier he made reference to Stacey Beggs, and I don't know if you heard about the plight of Stacey Beggs, right? Who was, was a top sprinter back then. And again, just one who didn't really get the opportunities and was able to move, to the next stage in his life and still being failed. The system has failed him, and, it's sad to see that
I agree.
He's in that sort of condition. And I think, again, coming back to what the comments from from the public is all about, hey, we don't want, more of the Stacey Beggs and others,
We should never let, and I think we should, look at someone like Stacey. I mean, Stacey inspired me. Stacey was one of the reasons why I chose GBSS, and it was one of the reasons what propelled me to even do athletics. And when I've never seen Stacey as an adult, and I've only heard stories, but it is really sad. And as I say, it's someone who was so talented, should have been given a chance, to not get to that point in their lives. And that's what I mean, is that holistically, we need to nurture, we need to care for our own in a way that there's life after sport, there's life in general to live, and we can adjust well and we can do better. That should never happen again. I fully agree. And I will do everything I can if the support is there, if the framework is there. I will do everything I can, not just for track and field, but all athletes. We should never have that happen to any of our athletes, because this was a talent that who knows what could have been done if it was tapped into and if it was supported properly. But, we should definitely not allow things like that to ever happen again. And however we can do that, I think we should make the steps to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. Rudian?
Yeah, most definitely. I sit down here and I remember Tamar Gilbert, which is the same thing. Tamar was such a phenomenal athlete, and nothing come out from her talent, and she was trained by under Mr. Glynn, which most people talk about how wonderful of a coach he was. I was coached by Mr. Glynn as well. So just a lot of the athletes come from that we have seen growing up, and we've seen the same thing happening today. A little better, maybe 10% better.
Yeah.
But we don't need 10%. We need 95%. We don't necessarily have to get 100, but we need to be in the 90s better in terms of how do we, because we love track and field. And yes, I'm in Canada, the opportunities here. I had so much opportunities. That's how I was grateful that Grenada gave me the opportunity to go to the Olympics to represent them. Because so much good things come from that for me personally. Going to the Olympic Games, I had Nike sponsors, and I had all these things. Opportunities happen for me. I get to speak even to this day. I'm still speaking in schools about not only in sports but on education. Why is it important? Why is it important to have a balance in both sports and school? All of these things in them that I have the opportunity to do today. I have my own track and field program where I have athletes go on scholarship every year. I have three athletes, even one right now who's competing at the top of his game, Aaron Brown, who came from my program, and actually who's still part of my track and field program. Whenever he come back to Canada, he's part of my club. He run under the club name, and when he come back, great things happen because of that opportunity.
Yeah,
it is time for everyone to get the same opportunity, because like I said, the things are happening, and sometimes it's sad to say, because look at, is it a country and a town thing? You ask that question because you're seeing the thing in soccer. You see, we had a mother came from Carriacou with a son. believe the opportunity going to be there for him to be a part of a team. He wasn't. Why? Is it because of where he from? Because he was good enough, to be part of that under 14 team. So you're putting people in the position to ask those questions, and it is wrong for us to think that way. But they are putting us in the position to think that way, and we are losing our athletes. I mean, I have athletes out here in Toronto who is Grenadian parentage, who is very good, and they're asking the question, should I represent Grenada? And if they have to ask the question, it's scary.
Yeah.
And it's fearful, because then it shows that they are listening and they are watching what's happening and they're seeing nothing is there for them. But we also have to understand how the system works. Yeah. The college system is not like home. So they have to also understand that. Grenada on a whole cannot give a scholarship. They in terms of track and field scholarship, they can't. It's the schools that have to do it. The athletes actually have to run or jump or throw to get the scholarship. But what they need is the opportunity to do that. What they need, listen, you said something about, somebody asked the question about what can we be done. My mother said something a few days ago. She said when they're growing up on Sundays, everybody's on the Magna College ground field playing cricket. Men, women, children, everybody is there. Do we have that today? No, we don't. We literally don't have those things today. And people said the problem is the technology. No, it's not the technology. There is no programs for them. Yeah. So what were they there to do? Yes, they will go to the phone. They will go to the tablet, because there is no programs for them. So it's time for us to put programs together. We said start in the elementary school and start here. And I get that aspect. The elementary school program is actually doing something. But one thing that brings me back, I was in school out here, and at least I had about 6, 7, 8 track and field meets before my high school championship meet. Same thing, you go to college. We have so many meets before we get to the NCAA championship. Yeah. But it's the same thing today. I mean, Magna College, we have our school sports, we have our Western games. We may go to the Texaco games back in the days, and then Intercol. That's it. It's the same thing then, 20 plus years ago, today. It's the exact same thing. 30 years ago, the same thing today. So how can we want good result doing the exact same thing? We bring different people in the ministry, people who was there already, then they get better position, all these things in them, and the same thing is happening. So is it the people? Is it the system? Is it, so it is so hard to know. But there are people like myself, you, Hazelon Regis. We have Kirani. We have all these people who went to the NCAA program, who run track and field, who's still involved in it a little bit, or some of them is a lot more, like myself, who's actually coaching now. I have my coaching levels. I don't want to say I want to go in there and change anything. Yeah, I don't want to do that. But the first thing I said to Michael, the track and field program should have a 6-man team. They look and see what was lacking or what was missing in Caribbean games. There is some events, or is that 2 people? You go around Grenada, and then you say, this is what's happening. Go to the schools, sit down with the people and say, we are looking for athletes in that event. Yeah. Start building this. We are looking for people in that event. And that way, when we go to Caribbean games, we go with a full team.
Yeah.
We should be going with a full team.
Like in some countries, what they do, as part of this, the talent identification rather, is that when they see someone and they believe that this person has sporting talent, whether it's in basketball, track and field, whatever,
soccer,
all they say, I need to get your information. I need to contact your parent. I need to know what.
Yeah.
And in a matter of weeks, that person is drafted into a school, into a sport, whatever it is. That is how they do it in some,
in some schools, in some countries. Yeah. And we have to get there. Yeah. And we have to get there, because we want to, there's so much we want to do and say, and we're using there's a lot of excuses. When you really listen to the administration, a lot of excuses, or we don't hear from them at all. We hear nothing from them, or what we hear is excuses. It is time to utilize people. Use those people. There's an elementary school coach who coached me. He's a teacher, scholar brother, hence the Jeffrey, and it's been 30 plus years he's been coaching at the St. Patrick's RSC School. Won so many primary school championship, Is there any recognition for him? Has anything come out from what he has done? Nothing. Then you go back to schools, Magna College, GBSS. You look at SAS. All those schools in them have anything changed? Has any of the schools been recognized, or the coaches who have done great things and who still is in the sports? You know, it's only when somebody passed away we hear, oh, this person did this for me, and this person do this for me, and this. We have to do this now. We have to appreciate them people now. We have no off-guard. We talk about this all the time. A lot of people, there are people in Grenada right now who don't know our national javelin thrower. They don't know who he is because we don't promote him like we should.
Yeah.
So Sean, so in going forward, I mean, how you think, and in all that Rudian has been saying there, which is basically what we have been saying almost year after year.
Yeah.
How from and I'm saying from an outside point of view, because you're not involved directly in track and field. You're across the Atlantic where well, basically you have the opportunity if you want to see top level track and field in Europe, you know. But how do you think in going forward should be the approach in addressing some of the fundamental issues we have?
Michael, I tried to get involved in that. I made an approach, and that approach was basically given the same response as when I left university and asked for support. There was no response, right? Yeah. The powers that be, let me put plain talk, bad manners. The powers that be are very selective on how they want to do things. And they essentially pick and choose who they would like to listen to. And it's obvious that the people that are guiding, the people that they're listening to, have not had any tremendous impact. I mean, what Rudian has said is just, I can't summarize that any better. I mean, I really can't. I mean, what he has said is worth everything in the last 2 decades of track and field, at least 3 decades of track and field in Grenada, perhaps even sport. I can't put that any more eloquently. But what I can say, the only thing that needs to be done is that people like me need to get involved. People like me try to get involved, and then we get rejected. We just need a way into this organization, and we just need a way to make the changes, because the body itself is not governed by any powers that be in Grenada. The body itself, I think, is a non-statutory body, and they're answerable to themselves.
Yeah.
And so how do you change a body that's answerable to itself? The only way you can really do it is by getting in there. And even that could be quite difficult. I mean, if you look at the faces that are there now, or the faces that have been there from since, I was a child. We're talking about less than 10 years old.
Yeah.
So when you have that mindset where people feel that they're entitled to be in a position for life, for as long as they feel, it is a bad thing, because what we do know about life is that it tends to change, right? So people like me can bring experience to a certain point, but then people like Kirani will at some point, people like Nazio John will at some point, and that's how sport evolves. Sport is not a thing that should stagnate. Nothing in life should be left to stagnate. Nobody should be allowed to hold the hems of anything for an extended period of time. But unfortunately, that's what's happened in Grenada, in a nutshell. And it has made things very difficult. There have been no programs, as you guys have pointed out. If you spot an athlete, there's been no program to say, fine, we're going to put together a 4x4 team. Fine, we're going to put together this team for the next 4 years. There have been no programs. There have been no fundraising programs. I mean, if you look at our teams going on to the Olympic Games or the World Championships, it's the same uniforms that they've been using every single year. Every year. These things are embarrassing. When my last time competing for Grenada, you had a Grenada on there, but half the G and the R were falling off Grenada. I mean, come on. I think things like that are not things that we should be proud of. I think when it's about treating our people a lot better, it's about knowing that we as a people and our athletes deserve better. And to be very honest with you, that cry has been for years, but they've been falling on the same ears, and it is a sorry state. I must say. I mean, it's not what I wanted to say, but it is a sorry state.
And it's not that I want to, or we want to take over what they're doing. Yeah. We're just asking for us to put us together. There's Zoom. Get everybody together. Let's do a Zoom meeting and take notes, take pieces, And so in that way, we know our voice can make a change.
Exactly.
Not necessarily that we have to physically be there to do it, but our voice can make a change. And once we can do that, and there are things you got to ask.
And that's all.
And that's all we're saying, right?
That's essentially what we're saying. Because I know I'm not physically in Grenada. I don't live there.
Yeah.
But I think when people offer their services, at least listen or at least acknowledge that. They haven't even acknowledged. So
they don't.
I just leave it alone, Michael. You don't try to put wrong peg in square hole. You can't put yourself where you're not wanted, because all you do is create problems. And that's not what I wanted. I don't want to create problems. I want to find solutions. I want to find people that can work together for the betterment of sport. And if that is not being allowed, and that's not an environment that's being fostered, then I don't want to be a part of an environment like that.
And you're right, because like I said, I speak to those who I can speak to, and like I said, I spoke to Mr. Henry Jeffrey, and he decided the first meet will be in December, either just before Christmas, and he's going to have meets for these athletes. This wasn't around from before; that those things wasn't there, the opportunity wasn't there. So now there are changes that make it with one person, but the athletes need to have meets. Can be a relay meet. It doesn't have to be anything but just getting the athletes involved in that way. Guess what? They're going to keep training. They're going to be out doing stuff. They're going to constantly getting things done, and not go home and then we say, oh, the tablet and the technology is taking over. There is no programs for them. We should have young girls doing netball. How many areas in Grenada have netball programs? Yes, soccer is the only thing we see that's actually doing something, because they are going places. So we give the soccer what this belongs to the soccer. What about the rest of the events? What about the rest of the sports, I may say? And we depend on, well, let's go to the elementary school and stuff. And then that's changed the whole thing now, because now you have to deal with education board and the Ministry of Sports board. It's just too much. Let us get involved with the parish council, and the parish council need to get together and then develop from there, and then we could make a difference, and then things can be so better for us moving forward. But that's where we at now. But we can only do what we can do from this far, from out to where we at.
From where, yeah. And I did say that. Let me just say that. Sam, thanks for your comments. I think if the program go on any longer, Dr. Lambert will say more than he intended. The frustrations are still there, even if he chooses to have a perspective that focuses more on using it for the benefit of all. And we'll go for another 15 minutes, because I don't know when I'll get Dr. Lambert again. I know he's very, very busy. So whatever we can grab from him now, we'll have to take. And there's so many comments coming in, so I wanted,
but Mike, I'm going to leave.
Yeah, but
I'll be listening.
Yes.
I have a gala that I have to go to, and I have to get ready. So I have to go and fix up my stuff. Yeah. So I have to go and pick up my suit real quick and come back and just run go. So
all right,
I am listening. I have my phone. I'll be listening, and if I have a question, I will tap into it. Certainly. But Sean, before I go, if you can tap in and ask about the elite program that we have, if you know much about it, if you can say something about it, that might help. All right, Sean.
Okay.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
All right. Okay then. So Rudian is leaving us. And yeah, Rudian. Yeah. So Sean, I don't know if you know anything about it, but he was asking about if you know about the elite program.
Okay.
Whether you know anything about it.
No, I'm not familiar with the elite program.
The elite program, right? Okay. Yeah. Well, there is so many, variations and things like that. So, but let me get on to some other comments that came in while you were speaking. Sorry, Kellon, I am not in a position in terms of, situation with Braylon Taplin and things like that. So, but let me see. Mike Batiste was saying no country and tongue thing. It's an old boys club, and in particular one clique having a stranglehold on decision making, etc. If talent is seen and is not connected to certain coaches, all effort will be made to ensure that they leave the sport from frustration. Recently, they made the move to have one club place themselves as half of the selection committee. That's a lot of politics in sports. Sean, is something that I, like you, try to take myself away from, in terms of there's a lot of politics involved in sports in Grenada. And I say politics in the, open and close, commas, because, and rightly so, when people get the opportunity to express themselves on the program, they do that. And they do that not out of any malice or anything like that, but out of concern and out of, as indicated, the past experiences. What you would have experienced and gone through. There are others, and you had luckily you had options. You had the opportunity to do other things. There are those who didn't. And that is, I think that is the concern, the basis of concerns for most people. What if, the question is, what if that person doesn't? And we have seen where there wasn't the opportunity for others, and people just fell through the cracks, and we have been asking about, you yourself might have heard about athletes over the years, and then you have not seen or heard anything about them, it's all because they were allowed to just wither away. They fell through the crack. There were not anything in place so that there can be any assistance to them, They're not even in terms of guiding them into making a decision, and that is the problem we have. I mean, at the age of 22, you were still, as you said, well, at least mature enough to make that decision. We're talking about people with 19 and 20 years, and they're not in a position, and then out of frustration, they just decide, hey, let me just go my own way. And some may have succeeded, some would have, made it out better in life, but unfortunately, there are many others who didn't.
Yeah, and believe me, Michael, I'm giving you the most mild version of my feelings at the time. But to be very honest with you, it hurt a lot. It was, I mean, to not even receive a response from an organization that you were represented since you were 6 or 7 years old in your life, really hurt. And that's the reality. It was a situation where there wasn't even an acknowledgement. I worked with the coach, Elliot, at the time. He was the guy who was in Tennessee and coaching me. And he said, your organization hasn't even responded to anything. We've sent multiple emails. I sent messages, and they never acknowledged it. I mean, so believe me, I get I don't know how anybody feels, but I can understand, and I can only imagine how much anguish that can make you feel, because you left in a position where this is what you've been doing, this is where you've been representing, you mean well for the country. You're not even asking for much. You're asking for someone to help you pay meals, and they won't even say yes or no. And it hurt a lot, right? And I think in some ways it's probably what propelled me to make a decision a lot quicker, because it's almost as if you have to live on your knees to do something, with this organization. And that's how I felt, for people to not even acknowledge me after so many years. It wasn't a good thing for me. It wasn't a good feeling for me. And I wasn't somebody who was going to constantly try to put myself in places where I didn't feel I belonged. So I just kind of left it to be. God gave me another avenue to do things with my life. And I think I did that, and I was happy with that. But I completely feel for those who either injured and feel like they don't even have the support or the guidance or a mentor, somebody who could say, hey, we acknowledge you. I mean, and that's all it takes sometimes. A problem discussed is half solved. And I think that's the thing, is that not even reaching out to people and letting them know that you're concerned about them is where they have failed. Forget funding. Forget programs. Just acknowledging somebody and saying, your scholarship is over. What would you like to do with your life? I would like to run, but I don't have this. Okay, here's what we can do for you over the next couple of years. If you have any concerns, please contact this person. We talk to you on a regular basis. Here are the programs we could put in place. I mean, Grenada is only 100,000 people. We have a massive network outside with places like New York. We have a massive diaspora. London and Toronto, I imagine, have a little bit smaller. But there's a diaspora that's out there of people, old boys, old girls, who are willing to support people who want to represent Grenada and help support them in some funding. And there is just no initiative to tap into that resource. And that hurts.
Yeah, I think, and so it hurt in the public, because Alana John is saying athletes are very frustrated and they are crying out for help. But unfortunately, the people in charge are not listening. Unfortunately, I do believe that Grenada will lose some of these talents to other countries. And
right.
as a disclaimer, Alana is Nazio's mom. Yeah. Sam is saying rejecting offers is a Grenadian syndrome. Being there, done that, not only in sports. Some other comments. So how much decades they still can get it right, and you don't want to take over. A complete overhaul is needed. In the business world, if you can get the job done, you are replaced with someone who can, and it doesn't take decades for that to happen. Robert Phillip, a name you're very familiar with, Sean, your past teacher. Well, our past teacher, I should say, because he taught me in school as well. I watched Dr. Lambert grow up from a sub-junior to a senior at the GBSS. He was a brilliant student and a naturally talented athlete. With the help and advice of his father, he trained and dedicated himself to the field of athletics. I was always very close to the intercall team as a teacher, as part of the management team, and as chief motivator. That is what I want to hear. Chief motivator. Dr. Lambert was an inspiration to the school and his fellow athletes. We remain proud of him. It has to be noted that Dr. Lambert participated in, I think he will come back with some, oh yeah, here it is, that had one of the quickest starts I have ever seen. He literally dumbfounded his opponents. He says he was also a specialist on the third, a specialist on the third leg, right?
Even at university I did the third leg. But Mr. Phillip is a good one because he still has a word, intestinal fortitude. I don't know if you remember that. I remember
he'll, as the great motivator, he will also lead the singing at intercall. He does everything. He was like the manager of the team. He was everything, you know.
Everything. And, what a phenomenal man. Phenomenal.
Very much so, even up to this day. Ali McIntyre says, note to Dr. Lambert, your record is long overdue to be broken. Is that a threat, Ali? Is that a threat?
Go for it.
Well taken. Lincoln Deputy saying the additional meets are good, but there may be risk where you have sportsmen and women that are not specialized at that young age and play various sports. They run, play football, like cricket, etc. We also have to consider a higher likelihood of injury. And here is George Gotti Robinson. And Sean, intercall is still the biggest track and field event, and the excitement and talent is still there. I congratulate the GSSGA for having that post-pandemic with 1 day meet. And Alan Sugar, Sean is speaking the truth. I heard about his struggles when it was happening, and I was really saddened. He did not usually run the 400 meters, but will win it anyway by using his 200-meter skills. Sean, is that so? Was that so?
I never liked the 400. It was never my cup of tea, but because I wanted to win, GBSS to win so bad. I mean, of all the things that I wish I mean, if I could trade an NCAA championship for one intercall victory, I would. It meant so much to me to win that intercall. You have no idea. I don't think people really understand. Like, for me, that would have been the biggest thing I would have accomplished in my life, to win intercall, even surpassing my national record, I think. I wanted to win intercall so bad because I just enjoyed watching GBSS as a boy. You know, and that fantasy in my head, that moment to win, and then to go onto the beach the day after and celebrate, I never got it. But it is what it is.
Yeah, very much so. Sean has contributed tremendously to Grenada and on and off the track. I really hope the powers that be acknowledge his contribution and give him the chance to further guide and help the future generations. I, for one, intend to reach out to him from time to time for more advice in terms of how I can develop Nazio. That's the dad of Nazio's father. There's a heavy feeling in Grenada's sporting arena. I think we all know where the problem is. It's not as hard to fix as we think. Not much bad apples in the bag. And Gotti Robinson say regrets for your hurt. I guess as much how that is feeling. And Sam is saying Ali, but not anyone from TBC. So here the trash talking is started. And by the way, folks, I'm hoping to have folks from the intercall committee sometime in probably a week or two to talk about intercall 2023. Plans in the making already, I can tell you, and they will come to discuss Intercall 2023. Maxwell Ramsey, we need to stop killing the spirit of athletes and those who want to persevere. Too much favoritism from people who lack vision. And imagine Kirani will sign up for jumping. It is a GBSS thing, winning at all cost. And Mr. Robert Phillip had us going. I couldn't win the Intercall when I was in school. Thank God I became a good coach to take my brothers to numerous wins at the Intercall, give us the younger coaches an opportunity to take Grenada forward. And that's
Nick. I know Nick.
Yeah, that's Nick who coached the GBSS. Good to hear from Nick. And the Grenadians know that Sean was the first athlete to win, I guess, to win all categories at Intercall. And all categories. Oh, so you would have won sub-junior, junior, senior, I guess.
Yeah, when I was there, I won everything.
You won, okay, all the categories.
Except my first year. As I said, my first year was my baptism of fire. And it was a very big learning experience, and it was a motivating factor for me. And I think that's what made me do well after that, because I never wanted to feel that way again. So after the first year, as you said, Melvin came on and he won. Mark had beat me, and I was very young, very immature. And I wanted to learn, but it was good. It was a good beating, because I said from that, it taught me a lot about persevering. It taught me a lot about doing better, and I took it, away from life, and it was a good thing. It was a lot to learn from it, and then I think that's what made me want to win, because I didn't want to lose again after
that. Sean, so Roger is saying thank you for making Grenada proud. As we get ready to wrap up, Sean, if you have to do anything once again, over again, Sean, I mean, it's 20 plus years, and I use it 20 because it's 21 years since you established that national record in Eugene, Oregon, May 31st, 2001. But even prior to that, so let's use the 20-year mark. If you had to do anything over again, and 20 years after, Sean, sitting down, recollecting everything from start to finish, what it is you will do better, what it is you won't do,
It's a good philosophical question. I mean, two ways I would answer this, right? I think in life, one, you kind of, I do it at least. I think once you make a decision, you kind of go with that decision and you run with it. I think what I would probably do different is probably take a bigger risk on myself. I think I want to encourage other athletes out there listening that perhaps you probably end up in a situation like me where you feel that you've been left out. But if this is what you want, if this is your passion, if this is your drive, I encourage you to go for it. And I encourage you to not be discouraged. Find a way. Find someone. If the powers that be are not there to support you or you feel that way, reach out to other people. That's what I think is the learning. I felt alone at the time. I felt no one was going to understand, and I felt I just had to find my way. So I did it the way I did. But that would be the only thing I would change up until that point in my life, because as I said, up until from primary, secondary school, university, I think everything was kind of lining up for me in the best possible way it could. I think after that, I think if you feel like that is your passion, that is your drive, take a chance on yourself. Don't let that desire that you have and that passion you have be dictated by what someone else is going to do. And that's what I think I let myself down. So I don't fully blame or hold responsible any one particular person, but I think at the end of the day, I should have made a decision to take a chance on myself more. And I think I discuss that with my wife all the time. I think I would have done that. That's the only thing I probably would have done different. I say probably because I do enjoy medicine a lot, but I think my first love will always be track and field.
Okay. Let me get some, I know we're ready to wrap up, but let me get some more comments here. From Francis Julian, former principal of SAS.
Mr. Julian.
Yes, and Mr. Julian lives in England. He says the early rivalry was between GBSS and PBC in the 60s to the 70s. PBC got bumped out by SAS. And then there's the trash talking now. Sam says, let's see. it's a PBC boy for sure, but I think deep down, Dr. Lambert, well, Ali is saying that Dr. Lambert is a PBC boy. Just look at his family tree.
No, I agree with
Sean,
Ali.
Sean, can you clear up this family tree thing about the GBSS and PBC with your family?
I am the only one in my family who has been a full-blooded GBSS boy. So all of my uncles, both of my brothers, all of my cousins have attended PBC. My father went to PBC, started off at PBC, and he finished at GBSS. But I am through and through 100%, 110% Canteen Bullet. I'm not anything else. No. And I always wanted to do that. I really just enjoyed GBSS spirits. I mean, those boys, when they ran back in there, when I looked at them, and as I said, a guy like, Robbie and Stacy and, a lot of McFarlane was on the third leg, and even people like Fabian. And I mean, these guys had such a tremendous impact on me wanting to be at that school. PBC had good athletes, and the one that sticks out, as I said, was Kwesi Woodruff. But as a school, it was always GBSS for me, always.
Yeah, well, that is interesting, because, well, as you said, your father ended at the GBSS, even though he started at the PBC, But let me see. So, yeah, Goti was saying Kirani was next, the goal for young athletes to strive. Yeah. And Toro says, Bas, we have to set up a best of GBSS 100 meter runners. Sean will represent Hughes. I have my candidates from Maguire, Archer, and Mary Batiste. Toro, don't call Batiste Mary Batiste. Winner takes all. 1 million Ghanese dollars. All right. So so Sean will represent Hughes. But it's sort of unfair because you have people like Sean, you have Kirani. I mean, it will be a tough bill. I know it will be a tough bill to fill the others, But a good way to start. Sam says he was the only one who was brave. Ali family tree is not Dr. Lambert at Canada High School. We have the pleasure of seeing his mom every day once school is in. And then Dwayne Griffith too. Dwayne Griffith. Yeah, the name Dwayne Griffith. Yeah.
He did long jump, and he was very good at 400 as well.
Yeah, Dwayne Griffith. Yeah. We'd love to hear Sean's take on Sports Lab for Grenada. Oh, that's our final point. I remember you mentioned it earlier. Yeah. Sean, our final point before we wrap up now. Sure. About a Sports Lab for Grenada. And Sports Lab in the context of not just track and field for Grenada. Now, I mean, you're on the medical side of things. So certainly it's something that probably is dear to you now.
Well, if there's funding and support for it, absolutely. I mean, a sports lab in Grenada will do wonders, not just, as we said, for track and field, but for sports on a whole. I mean, I'm really happy to see what people are doing. Guys like Lester Smith, doing more of the grassroots things in things like football, for example. The GFA is moving forward with Mr. Glean at the helm of it. The swimmers are doing good. So I think on a whole, what we need to do is revive things like cricket and so. To a level that it was when we were excited about people like Junior Murray and Brian Lara and so playing cricket. But I think on a whole, I think a sports lab, if there's a funding there, now the issue of funding will come into play because funding, resourcing, and sustaining is a thing that we have a problem with in Grenada, particularly sustaining. But if there's an opportunity for all of things like that, I'm always willing to be a part of it and offer my support and expertise wherever possible. But I think it will be a phenomenal idea.
Mm-hmm. Right, I want to thank you very much, as Mr. Philip would end. Thank you, Dr. Lambert, GBSS all the way. Yeah, I want to thank you very much for accepting the invitation and being part of the program. And hopefully, sometime in the future, we can always come back and talk again.
That would be good. Yeah. That would be good. That would be all right.
Thank you very much, Sean, and all the best. And cheers to you and family.
Thank you very much. Cheers to you and family as well. Bye-bye.
Okay then, right. So, folks, there you hear it from Dr. Sean Lambert, live from London, England, where it is pretty much late in the evening, after 7 minutes to 8, as you know. And it was so much a pleasure having Sean with us. Folks, before I wrap up, I just want to, some things that bothered me for a while. It appears that all is not well in sports administration in Grenada. I picked up something, over the past few days that especially at the Grenada Olympic Committee, it appears that the interim president, and that's what I'm learning. I haven't been able to confirm it. I haven't even spoken to the person. Appears to be moving away from, the duties as interim president of the Olympic Committee and concentrate on, personal life. Okay. And if that is so, well, it appears that, things are really sad with sports administration in Grenada. And I really would like to know why. I'll probably try to reach out and, if possible, get the individual onto the program very soon to find out, what is really going on. And if so, what is really causing, this problem in sports administration in Grenada. But that is what I'm picking up, and I will endeavor to get some more information on that. GBSS have 800 plus boys to choose from. Not even SASAF have that pool to choose from, and spreading resources too wide can kill our sports people. Sam, thank you very much. I totally enjoyed this program. Thank you, Michael, Sean, and Rudian. And what will change sports is the approach. Start from level 1 and move up to a different level with qualification. And finally, great interview. That is why I behave myself today. Big up, Sean. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, folks. Thank you, everyone. And I forget to tell Sean, thank you to his wife, Akima, because I'm certainly had to get permission from Akima. I'm just kidding about that, But she has to give him her blessings, And I know she would have said, okay, Sean, that's not a problem. Cheers to you. But thank you once again for being part of the program. Look forward to being with you come next Saturday, God's willing, hopefully in New York again. I'm not certain, but I will let you know during the week whether or not we are changing location as per usual. But I want to thank you for being part of the program, and the invitation is yours to join me next Saturday. Until then, please do have a wonderful weekend, and whatever you do it with some level of moderation. Well, in the case of, don't overdo it. I look to see you again. Thank you very much.